Hello and welcome to Globespan 24/7 as we bring you our weekly broadcast from New York and from Guyana. And as usual, we try to bring as much news as possible and information to you, our audience, and you can be the judge for what our presenter will say to us tonight. I know sometimes we get criticized for not asking follow-up questions in terms of when someone says something that we should have rebutted, but this show is not only not really featured. The feature is not to rebut our presenters. Let them present their view. And yes, sometimes there's need for correction, but sometimes we can overkill with the correction. So our apologies if you think that we should have, in some cases, asked follow-up questions and we did not. But in case you have a follow-up question you want us to ask our guests, please feel free to send a text to me or to Devin or to Dr. Rose, and we will bring it definitely to the attention of our guests. Tonight, we want to thank Nohar Singh for making this platform available, and of course, Devin Bisu, our technical specialist. So all of you, our viewers out there, we want to thank you for joining in, and of course, to those of you who are continuing to do your advertisement with us, we want to thank you as well. This evening, there's no stranger to us. We have a man of the moment, attorney at law, and Commissioner for the Elections Commission, Mr. Sase Gunraj. Mr. Commissioner, welcome again.
Thank you, Mr. Sugrim, Dr. Rose, thank you for having me. It's been a long time, but it's a pleasure to be here once again.
Yeah, but tonight you're in the hot seat because there's a lot of questions we have for you, and the audience also needs some information. And we are hoping tonight that, I know you're not the chairman of the commission, but you're one of the 6 commissioners, so you'll be able to hopefully divulge much information to us. Dr. Rose, my co-host, welcome again.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Mr. Gunraj, for being here for the second time. And we will ask you the toughest questions, but pertaining to GECOM and its reforming system and local government elections and so forth.
Well, it's always my pleasure, and I make every effort to answer as candidly and as effectively and honestly as I can, so as to disseminate the information to your listening audience.
Without doubt. And Mr. Commissioner, before we start in the question, in your view, how is the state of the commission as we speak tonight?
Mr. Sugrim, like all bodies, corporate and legal persons, of which GECOM is one, the functions are executed by officers. In the case of GECOM, I've said this on many occasions on this show and other public forum. GECOM is a commission consisting of a chairman and 6 commissioners, and the operations, the functions of GECOM are executed by a secretariat headed by a chief elections officer and other officers under him. I would love to tell you that GECOM is functioning efficiently and peachy as of now, but unfortunately, GECOM has been fractured by the several events over the last few years, which culminated in that infamous election saga, which lasted 5 months last year. Prior to that, the other landmark event would have been the unilateral appointment of the chairman, Justice Patterson, by the then President Granger, in contravention of a constitutional provision that has been enshrined since 1992, that is referred to as the Carter Formula. It is a constitutional provision which had its genesis in negotiations brokered by President Carter prior to the 1992 elections, which was heralded as the return of democracy. And it was under the auspices of that formula that the commission functioned. And that formula was enshrined further in the commission, in the Constitution in 2001, when the commission became permanent. In my humble view, from when I joined the commission in 2015, the camaraderie and the efficacy of that formulation was still benefiting the nation. It was still benefiting the electoral process at that time. However, over the years that transpired thereafter, it was very clear the downward spiral that body was taking. I'm happy to say that under the stewardship of Chairman Justice Retired Claudette Singh, that some of that image started to be repaired and restored. And today, I believe that it is by that stewardship that we've managed to have some sort of semblance and some sort of civility in the commission. However, like I said, it remains a very fractured commission, and I'll be very frank and blunt when I say this. In my humble view, it is very difficult to interact meaningfully with persons who hold themselves out to be paragons of virtue, who ought to be respected and who ought to demand their respect, when those very persons sat idly by and countenanced the mischief and the insidious behavior that was perpetuated during those 5 months, silently, and in some instances, I dare say, encouraged it. So it is against that backdrop that I must answer the question that while every effort is being made to ensure that the commission functions in an effective manner, you have sometimes less than constructive criticism, you have less than meaningful interaction at the level of the commission, and as a consequence, the function of the commission is circumscribed by those prevailing circumstances.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I know you alluded to the fact that the commission is fractured and it started coming down maybe a couple of years ago. But there are a lot of reports and concern on the outside that had the chairman, which you highly praise, had she stepped in with the authority that rests with the chair, that the 5-month saga could have been avoided had she stepped in when members of the commission was going rogue, so to speak, but she did not step in, and that created even more confusion among the people and even within the commission.
Mr. Sugrim, while that is a view that I will not entirely disagree with, being present throughout the entire occurrence and the unfolding of that saga, one has to be realistic and pragmatic in the circumstances. This is a person who sat for many, many years preceding her appointment as the chairman of the Elections Commission, as a puisne judge, later a Court of Appeal judge, and then later as police and legal advisor, etc. This is a person who has depended heavily on officers and persons charged with the responsibility of executing certain functions. Executing those functions in many cases statutory functions, and in this specific case of the Chief Elections Officer, as he then was, Keith Lowenfield, a statutory function whose every action is defined by law. And she did, as she quite rightly was entitled to do, placed reliance on his performance, placed reliance on his assurances. And as a consequence, of course, as she later found out publicly, that it was a misplaced reliance. However, the reality was certain assurances from anyone. When you go to the doctor, Mr. Sugrim, you expect that doctor to carry out his functions in dispensing medical care to you in a manner that he was trained to do and in a manner in keeping with the Hippocratic oath that he took. Dr. Rose, when you go to a lawyer, you expect that lawyer to carry out his functions in the same manner, in keeping with the training he has received, in keeping with the oath of office that he took. When you have someone, you use the word, Mr. Sugrim, your words, not mine, rogue elements conducting themselves in a far from professional manner, it makes it very difficult. It makes it very difficult for a person who ought to place reliance on the proper execution of the functions by those persons to be properly guided. And like I said, I find it very difficult. I find it very difficult to heap blame upon the shoulders of the chairman in those circumstances.
Right.
And in reality, I was there. I saw how it unfolded.
Commissioner, I want to just bring an analogy of the same thing you're talking about, and I know Dr. Rose want to come in. But when the United States, the intelligence arm of the United States, CIA, FBI, whoever they are, told President Bush at that time that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, most of the world knew that that was incorrect because they knew Saddam Hussein did not have weapons of mass destruction. Most of the world knew that. I think I knew that. When the whole world saw what Mr. Mingo and Mr. Lowenfield was doing, and the chairman went missing. I know you're defending her, and I'm not saying that you should or should not, but when she went missing, that contributed to the dysfunctional GECOM that we have seen recently. And I don't want to, continue the discussion with that. That's the view of a lot of people. But of course, as commissioner, you have your view as well. So, commissioner, in saying that, do you think then
this topic, before you come off of this topic?
But before you answer, do you think that the commission, as it's currently make up, that should now be dismantled and something else should be in place? What is your recommendation?
All right, so I'll answer that question subsequently, but let me address the analogy that you have brought. You knew, or you claim that you knew, that Saddam Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction. You are saying that Bush ought to know, President Bush ought to know that Saddam Hussein had no weapons of mass destruction. But what he did, he placed reliance on the information that was brought to him by the authority that was responsible for doing so.
And we saw what happened, Commissioner.
No, and he acted as a consequence. It is the same. It is on all fours. It is on all fours with what Justice Claudette Singh did. Put Justice Claudette Singh, substitute President Bush with Justice Claudette Singh, and substitute whatever authority, the CIA, the Secret Service, or whatever, or the FBI, with Keith Lowenfield and Mingo. They had responsibilities. They took that information to the chairman, and she relied on it. But we'll move off from that.
Yeah, yeah. The whole world saw what they were doing, so it was kind of strange that the chairman stood silent. That's the point. But go on. You think the composition of the commission now should be disbanded to serve the country more effectively, or should it stay the same?
When I'm placed, when this question is posed to me, I have a very eloquent cop-out that I could adopt, and which I adopt in circumstances that I don't want to answer this question, but I want to answer it tonight. But I'll tell you the cop-out. That is above my pay grade. I'm a member of the commission. I am not tasked with the responsibility of composing the commission, either by choosing members in the current formulation or by changing the formula by which members are chosen. However, I can answer it. I can answer it by saying that, first of all, changing the composition of the commission as it stands requires constitutional changes, and I am not sure of the level of entrenchment of that specific provision, but I believe if I am to take the liberty as to hazard a guess, I believe that it will require some support from the opposition. Secondly, in my humble view, the composition of GECOM as it presently stands has not really failed to act. It has not really failed to function. Sometimes it is the population of that composition that causes issues. And like I said earlier in answer to your earlier question, sometimes it is extremely difficult. It is extremely difficult to interact with persons who don't exhibit a desire to engage in meaningful discussion, who do not exhibit a desire to bring meaningful contributions to any discussion, who do not take steps which seem to advocate and to elevate the processes and the functions of the commission, but whose entire posture, whose entire interaction at the commission level, in my humble view, sometimes is only geared to stymieing for progress rather than fostering progress.
So if I'm hearing you right, before Dr. Rose come on, Commissioner, the commission itself don't have a problem, but the secretariat is where the problem is. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that at the commission level, and I think I'll have to, to ensure that I am not misquoted or to ensure that I do not present the wrong image. I am saying, for the avoidance of doubt, that my colleagues on the other side sometimes do not bring to the commission what they ought to bring to the commission to ensure that the work of the commission progresses in an efficient and successful manner.
Okay. And of course, Commissioner, they will also say the same thing about the other side. So that's something that we have to work with.
Every person is entitled to their own view, Mr. Sugrim.
That's
and just
correct.
like you said that the world stood and noticed the occurrences of last year, the world stood and observed their posture last year.
Well, okay. Dr. Rose?
Not a secret.
Good afternoon or good evening, Commissioner Gunraj.
Good evening.
And welcome back to the program again for the second time. And to all our listeners, welcome to Globespan 24/7. Now, can you explain to our listeners why are there not term limits for commissioners like you and the Claudette Singh herself, Commissioner herself. Do you think there should be term limits?
I am tempted, Dr. Rose. You were smiling earlier on when I was prefacing my answer to the previous question of Mr. Sugrim in relation to the eloquent cop-out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't determine that. But if I can hazard a guess, I believe that the tenure that is ascribed to commissioners, and the chairman, of course, also being herself a commissioner. Excuse me. I believe that the security of tenure that is provided to us is to ensure that like judges, that the threat of removal does not, or the threat of tinkering or tampering with one's presence on the commission does not affect their ability to carry out their functions without fear or favor, or without the impediment of them being removed at the will of some person or persons. That does not affect, or that ought not to affect the person.
Commissioners like yourself, they're all partisan because you represent different political parties. You represent the governing party and the opposition commissioners and so forth. Do you think?
And I disagree with that, Dr. Rose. I do not represent a party on the commission. I was nominated. I was appointed by the then President Ramatar in his deliberate judgment. There are other commissioners who were appointed by various presidents on the advice of the leader of the opposition. And if I can quickly go around the table to give you that information, Vincent Alexander was appointed by, it would have been Bar Jagdeo when he was president on the advice of the then leader of the opposition.
But he was nominated by, I think, Robert Corbyn.
Right. The same with Charles Corbyn. Desmond Trotman was appointed by President Granger in his own deliberate judgment. The same for myself by President Ramatar. The same for myself with the same for Commissioner Narayan, and Commissioner Bibi Shadik was appointed by President Granger on the advice of Bar Jagdeo, leader of the opposition. My point is, when you get onto the commission, regardless of the route by which you got there, you are deemed by the Constitution to be executing an independent function, and that independence is bolstered by the security of tenure that is guaranteed by the absence of those very impediments that you earlier discussed.
Okay. Former President Jimmy Carter, he actually established this system in 1992. But it was meant to be for 1 year only, and reforms were supposed to take place. It lasted 23 years under the PEP and 5 years under APNU. What reforms are necessary to make sure that GECOM perform more effectively in future elections, given what happened last year, really 5 months?
When I answered a question earlier on posed by Mr. Sugrim in relation to the functions of GECOM being executed by persons, like a company, its functions must be executed by persons, be it the board of directors or the management team and the other officers of the company, including employees. In my view, the legislative and constitutional framework that provides for the existence of GECOM and that dictates its functions is very, very thorough. And that thoroughness is only now bolstered by the proposed amendments to the Representation of the People Act, which are available for public scrutiny and consumption as we speak. I respectfully submit that GECOM will function and function excellently if persons execute their functions with professionalism and with integrity as it was intended. When you look at the Representation of the People Act, which is one of the vestiges of the old English system that we inherited, can you, in your wildest dream and with the greatest of imagination, imagine that one of Her Majesty's servants or one of Her Majesty's officers will have to operate in a manner guided by integrity and professionalism only under the threat of tremendous penalty, including jail time and large fines? No. That is why the earlier act did not create penalties for such offenses. But what we saw persons who held themselves out, who have had a history of public service. Claremont Mingo has worked with GECOM for years. Claremont Mingo has trained hundreds, if not thousands, of officers for years at GECOM. Keith Lowenfield, retired Army officer, has served at GECOM for years, participated and ran several elections. But what you've had, all of that being thrown out of the window for whatever considerations perhaps are yet to be made public. How do you legislate against that? How do you put a framework in place to deal with people who are willing and has demonstrably done so, willing to throw their integrity on the line, to throw their professionalism on the line? How do you legislate against that? How do you formulate against that? Excuse me, you can't. You can't.
Mr. Commissioner, in 2006, Vincent Alexander discovered that Gokul Budu, the CEO then, had acted inappropriately by giving a party a seat that the party should not have gotten. In 2020, we saw something similar with Lowenfield. You use the word if commissioners and operators of the GECOM operate, but the word if, that's the operative word. They do not act professionally, and they do not conduct themselves in an integral manner. So I'm saying to you, or I'm asking you, do you think reforms are needed to correct these past problems or illegalities? We talk about Gokul Budu, you should recall that incident at the time when he had to be corrected by Commissioner Vincent Alexander and Lowenfield actions last year. Now, who is to say the present CEO will not act in a similar fashion?
My question, let me pose a question to you with your permission, Dr. Rose. Tell me, what reform do you think that GECOM needs to curb against that? And I will comment on it.
That's easy. I think GECOM should not have political appointees. You bring the clergy in, you bring the business sector in, and so forth to be the commissioners.
Who you bring in?
The members of 1 or 2 members from the clergy, the business community, the legal community, and so forth, organizations, and not political appointees. And I think they should be appointed by a secret vote in Parliament?
Well, Dr. Rose, allow me respectfully to correct you.
Okay.
First of all, I am not aware, and I stand ready to be corrected if there is so. I am not aware of any function of the Parliament allowing for a secret vote. But like I said, I could be wrong. Second of all, what guarantees the independence? What guarantees the independence of any one of those classes of persons that you have just mentioned? Thirdly, who will be responsible? Which person or group of persons or which entity will be responsible for choosing, for fine-tuning, for shortlisting, and for eventually appointing those persons? It certainly couldn't be all 65 members of the Parliament, because if every one of them has the opportunity to nominate one, then you'll have 65 people to choose from. How will that process make practical and pragmatic sense?
Again, simple. Establish an independent body to do that. And let me just say this. You said Parliament has never voted for secretly or privately before. But we've got to start becoming creative and innovative. If it not happened before, it can happen in the future. We cannot go back to say, well, we have to do it this way and that way. These are changing times, and you have to change with the times. So I'm saying because of this, you don't want to put a person name out there and then people vote along party lines thinking that this person is going to represent. You put the names out there and let them vote secretly. So you don't know how each other votes.
Dr. Rose, I will have to respectfully disagree with that view.
That's great.
But like I said, my preference is, and as I've said earlier on, my personal view is that once appointed to the commission, I become an independent member of that commission. And you know, this is a point that I have to make very regularly. Not once have I ever had to advocate the position of the People's Progressive Party on that commission. I have always advocated the position that is grounded in law, reason, and which in my view will have a just outcome, a fair outcome to all of the parties involved. All of the parties involved. It is not my fault that in most, if not all of those instances, the position advocated by the People's Progressive Party, Civic, coincided with that just view. However, on the contrary, in your own time, I invite you to analyze the positions that have been adumbrated by the other side. And it will tell a stark story. And further on that issue, I will say not. However, that being said as well, I prefer for the public, however misconceived that perception may be, to look at 3 people sitting on the commission and say, those 3 represent the PPP, and those 3 represent the PNC. And you know they wear their colors on their sleeves, and you know where it goes. As opposed to persons who are going to be closeted politicians, coming under the guise of from civil society and the clergy and the business sector and all of this, like you said, and ending up in a very position, or perhaps even worse than the positions that are now coming out from GECOM.
Let me say this. Let me give you the credit. You will not act on behalf of the political party PEP. Well, do you think the other 5 commissioners will take that stance like you?
We have had, unfortunately, very stark instances when when exactly what you said is correct, and that is unfortunate. But like I said, you know what you have now. There is no guarantee. There is no guarantee that persons who come under the guise of being independent, and you know, every time I have this discussion, Dr. Rose, I always challenge people with whom I have it. If you could sit in your quiet time, usurp all the functions of parliament, usurp all the functions of that independent body tasked with choosing and all of that. If you can find me 6 or 7 truly independent persons, all Guyanese, all who are immersed in the society, all who are willing to serve at that level, that can be chosen to be, and all without political baggage, all without political preference, open political preference, etc. If you can find 6 or 7 such persons, then you certainly could be classed a better person, perhaps even a better human being than I am.
Okay. Let me move on. Can you clarify for our members, or listeners rather, what are the functions of the commissioners and the function of the chairperson and the CEO, as brief as possible?
In short, the commission's role, the commission's role is to set policy. The secretariat, headed by the CEO, is to execute those policies in keeping with the dictates of the commission. And as I said this, once more, much to the chagrin of lots of people, including some of my colleagues, the CEO and members of the secretariat are creatures of the commission. Of course, the commission being a creature of the Constitution. There's a reason why the process of choice of the chairman is different from the process of choosing a commissioner. If you are to juxtapose, for example, the Public Procurement Commission, where 5 persons are nominated by Parliament for that commission, and the head is chosen on an equal footing, and then the chairman is chosen by the among themselves. And I'm going to juxtapose one further example, the Local Government Commission, where, for example, the president has the power of appointing 2 persons, I believe. The unions have one, the opposition has one, etc. You have these persons, and then they nominate a chairman from among themselves. There's a reason why there's a stark difference in the nomination and appointment of the chairman of the commission as opposed to the commissioners. And the reason for that stark difference, as proposed by President Jimmy Carter in his wisdom, as you said, it's outlived its usefulness, etc. That's a discussion for another day, or perhaps even later in this conversation. The difference in choosing or appointment of the chairman has to do with her peculiar role of impartiality, further impartiality, and ensuring that justice is served on that commission.
Gentlemen, we'll take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion. Great discussion, Commissioner.
Thank you.
We'll be back shortly.
Make your vacation a memorable one. Enjoy your trip just as if you are at home. Your music, your culture, and your way to have fun with all you can eat and drink at an all-inclusive vacation. You choose the all-inclusive vacation that suits you. July 14th to July 18th is Bollywood on the Beach, plus Indo-Cultural in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. July 21st to July 25th, Christian Community Week in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. July 28 to August 1st, Curry Duck Curry Competition in Cancun, Mexico. August 4th to August 8th, Caribbean Throwback Week, Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. And August 11th to August 15th, Soca vs. Indian, Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. Seats are available from New York, Miami, Orlando, Atlanta, Newark, Canada, Trinidad, and Guyana. Meet up with family and friends, and plus make new friends at all these inclusive vacations. TravelSpan has your vacations, plus cheap seats to Guyana and Trinidad. Call TravelSpan today at 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. In Canada, call 647-557-6200. In Guyana, call 227-1701. And in Trinidad, call 645-1604. All From One Supplier is pleased to announce its online shipping for West Indian and American groceries. Order online at allfromonesupplier.com and with free shipping and deliveries to any part of the United States. Save time and energy to shop for all of your West Indian groceries from the safety of your home or office. We carry West Indian products like curry powders, meats and fish, dashing bush, pepper sauce, sodas, and your favorite snacks. All From One Supplier has it all. All From One Supplier fulfills and ships your order directly to you. So visit All From One Supplier today to start shopping, or call All From One Supplier at 718-551-3292 to handle all of your West Indian grocery needs. That's All From One Supplier, 718-551-3292. Free shipping, free deliveries, or curbside pickup from allfromonesupplier.com. Folks, the Nest Restaurant is the place to dine for Guyanese and Caribbean dishes. It is the best restaurant in Queens. The staff is courteous, and Dave, the owner, is always there to welcome you. So for a memorable dining experience, visit the Nest Restaurant located at 12717 101 Avenue, South Richmond Hill. Go and make a reservation today, or takeout. Call 718-847-4035. Dave West Indian Products is the only distributor of 100% authentic West Indian products. Dave West Indian supplies fish, vegetables, curry, spices, sodas, and coconut water, plus geese and much more straight from Guyana and the Caribbean. For all your shopping needs, visit Dave's Guyana Fish and Grocery Market. Dave West Indian products are also available in West Indian stores, Key Food, and allfromonesupplier.com. Dave West Indian has a full line of the most desirable products to fit all your needs. So visit Dave Guyana Fish and Grocery Market on 118th Street on Liberty Avenue, or in Maryland at 7505 New Hampshire Ave, or any West Indian stores, or allfromonesupplier.com. Dave West Indian, your 100% authentic West Indian product.
Welcome back to our audience. We want to thank you so much for staying with us, and we want to thank Commissioner Gunraj for being with us. Commissioner, Dr. Rowe's question, you mentioned that you are independent, in your words. The Guyanese people see 3 PP commissioners, they see 3 PNC commissioners. I want to ask you this question as you consider yourself an independent commissioner. How many times have you voted in favor of proposals made by the 3 PNC nominated commissioners? Can you recall that?
I can't give you a number off the cuff, but I can tell you it has happened and happened very frequently. And allow me to dilate for 1 second on that very question. Recall me speaking about the state in which I found the commission when I joined in 2015?
Yeah.
I can happily report that the level of camaraderie that existed at that commission, it allowed myself and other members of my quote-unquote side to meaningfully interact with members of the other side on any issue. And just like you have asked me how many times I have voted in favor of a proposal that was made by a member of the other side, I will be happy to tell you as well. I will be happy to tell you as well that members of the other side have voted similarly on proposals that we have made. But that is the nature of a bipartisan commission. That is the nature of a commission that has different views. Yourself and Dr. Rose sitting here must, out of necessity, have differences sometimes in what you want to ask a guest or not. However, decency, a desire for progress, and the natural order of things would allow compromise.
I'm glad to hear.
But when you have, and I spoke of the breakdown in the commission that has gradually and at times less than gradually prevailed. And let me provide an example to you, Mr. Sugrim. Excuse me. And this is one of public notoriety. I'm just providing the example by way of reminder. The no confidence motion was passed on the 21st of December 2018. And that no confidence motion contemplated that an election be held within 90 days or 3 months of the successful passage of that motion. I have information that the day immediately following, that is to say the Saturday morning, Keith Lowenfield, as he was then CEO, met with the senior management of the commission, of the secretariat, and started to plan for the holding of elections. The commission, under the stewardship of the unilaterally appointed chairman, whose appointment was later found to be unlawful by the Caribbean Court of Justice, James Patterson, who is tasked with the responsibility of summoning and hosting commission meetings as chairman. I, as Commissioner Gunraj, can't call a meeting and say, the rest of you come, let me sit down here. It could only be done by the chairman. You know when he called the meeting? 1 month later. 1 month later, on the 21st of January, 33.33% of the time allotted for the holding of those elections had elapsed by that time. And it is expected. So the rot, Mr. Sugrim, didn't start necessarily from the bottom. It started from the very top.
I got you. And we all know that the appointment of Justice Patterson was, as you rightly said, unconstitutional. But I don't want to put you on the spot, Commissioner. But can you recall any proposal that was made by the PNC nominated commissioners that you support? Any specific proposal they had made?
I can't off my cuff, Mr. Sugrim. I can't.
Okay.
But I can tell you without fear of successful contradiction that there were many. And I hasten to add that there were suggestions as well of the other side, of our side, that found favor with the other side.
Right. So, Commissioner, so what I'm trying to, maybe what the audience is also getting from you is that matters that are not race related, if that's the right word to use, seem to have camaraderie and good discussion with both sides. But when it comes to race appointment of senior member of the commission, that seems to be split between the middle, in my view, and in the view of many others. Is that a fair view, or that is not so?
I didn't say that.
No, I am saying that, not you. I am proposing that. I disagree. I disagree because
if you're referring to the first round of appointments, of recruitment rather, first major round of recruitment that was done by the commission, that would have been around 2017, 2018, when Roxanne Myers was appointed. And that was of course shrouded in controversy. One of the little known appointments that was done without even a quack, as the boys in the street would say, with little or no opposition from either side, was the appointment of the legal officer, Excellence Dazzle. So if you are saying I reject the view.
Well, Commissioner, let me rephrase my statement. Sorry.
No,
when it comes to appointment of sensitive position, the CEO, as you said, deputy CEO, the 3 PNC number commissioners plus Justice Patterson voted in favor of Myers when the current CEO, who was apparently based on some view, was more qualified for the job, he was passed over. Was that a racial vote, you think, in your view? I'm not saying it is, but does that consider, in your view, a racial vote?
I think, and I say this unabashedly, I think that entire schematic of events was part of the ploy to rig the elections whenever they were called.
I got you. Okay.
And let me give you some details. It started with the resignation of Suraj Bali. As I mentioned earlier on, it is the chairman's view. It is the chairman's responsibility to call meetings. In the absence of a chairman, no meetings were held. You recall the protracted process, a process that was deliberately, in my view, protracted by President Granger in appointing a replacement. And when a replacement was eventually appointed, it was done unlawfully. That being said, you had that appointment, which was faulty at best. But in the interregnum, when the commission was not sitting, what Lowenfield did? Lowenfield sent home everybody whose contract expired. In my view, and not in my practical view, also or in my managerial view, in my legal opinion, there was no basis for sending home persons whose contracts expired. They were allowed, the law allows you to hold over in your employment. But that as well, you could have seen the start of the partisan actions since then. So Lowenfield sent home everybody, including Vishnu Prasad, who was the CEO, deputy CEO.
But at that time, Mr. Commissioner, did they request that their contract be renewed? Because they also have a responsibility to write to the commission.
To a functioning commission, a commissioner doesn't have a head.
That will not negate the staff from writing the commission expressing their interest to continue in their period of employment. I don't know the details, but we can move on, Commissioner.
As we sit here, Mr. Sugrim, I cannot say that I cannot confirm or deny whether the affected employees did signal that intention either to the CEO for his forward transmission to the commission or otherwise.
All right, let's move on now to local government election, Commissioner, if you don't mind.
Get there in 1 second, because those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it.
Okay.
In keeping with my theme, that as long as the commission functions and persons carry out their functions in a professional manner, heralded by integrity, we will not have a recurrence of this.
I got you.
You had these people being sent off, and then you had a flawed recruitment process which resulted in the appointment of Roxanne Myers. You recall the very choice words that the Ethnic Relations Commission had to share in relation to that process after an investigation was done. So all of this was done, in my view, deliberately. And you know, before I can't say before I allow you to move on. This will be my last word on this. If you think that the actions of Justice Claudette Singh were bad, and as you criticized them earlier on, think about what Patterson would have done. He would have accepted, I dare say, based on the trajectory that he was charting, he would have accepted those flawed numbers from Mingo.
And Commissioner,
we're having a different discussion today.
And Commissioner, and in fairness to what you said there, I lay that blame at the feet of the PPP. They hung out Commissioner, what's his name, before Mr. Patterson.
Surge Valley?
They actually went and protested against Surge Valley, the PPP, and what happened after that? I'm not saying that the PPP is to be blamed or anything else, but they have a lot of responsibility, because had Surge Valley still been there, as you mentioned, these shenanigans would not have taken place. I think because
there's no guarantee. There's no
well,
guarantee
based on his past performance. I mean, but that's a different discussion.
It is.
Let's get into the local government election. Will we have local government election this year?
All things being equal, yes.
What does that mean, Commissioner?
There are certain processes which have to be conducted and concluded as precursors to the holding of the elections. One of the first processes is a registration exercise to ensure that the list is refreshed, and to ensure once that list is refreshed, there are certain functions which stem from that, which of course will result in the holding of elections. It is my view that we are well poised to ensure that those processes are concluded, and once concluded, local government elections can be held.
Has preparation started for that new list of electors?
We have asked at our last meeting the Chief Elections Officer to prepare basically a roadmap of which includes time and tasks to from where we are currently to the holding of local government elections and beyond. So it is our hope that once we get that done, we will start acting on that, and it is my personal hope that we can start acting on that with alacrity.
But Commissioner, before Dr. Rose come on, shouldn't GECOM be in a state of readiness? I mean, look, Barbados, the Prime Minister called election 3 weeks before, and they had a perfect election. I mean, Grenada, all over the Caribbean, why isn't GECOM in a state of preparation for election at any time, like what happened in 2018, as you said?
GECOM, the GECOM that I sat and I was a part of, put systems in place to ensure that elections can and will be held in the shortest possible time. In that regard, we ensured, as I mentioned just now, one of the first tasks to be completed is the refreshing of the list, to use common parlance. We put systems in place where we'll have 2 lists ready, one at the end of April and one at the end of October. And each of those lists have a shelf life or a lifespan of 6 months. So while you have one being refreshed, you have one being present. So the list that was certified on the 30th of October is live until the 30th of April. And by the time the life of that 30th of April expires, there's a registration process continuously going on. There's the next one that is given life on the 30th of April, and the process continues. That way, we would have been ready, and our focus is usually on local government elections, the entirety, local, general and regional elections in entirety. But under our local government, excuse me, under our local government framework, it caters for runoff elections, it caters for by-elections in the event of death or resignation of councillors, etc. Excuse me. As a consequence, we were in that state of readiness. But like I said earlier on, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. When the no confidence motion was successfully passed, there was a list in place. But what happened? Due to the dilatory tactics of the players at that time, they allowed that list to expire. And ever since, if I can chronicle the events that have occurred since then, and the last list, you recall, in order to hold, so after that 2018 list expired on the end at 2019 April, in order to hold the 2020 general and regional elections, we had to do a registration process. The events that transpired between the 30th of April and I believe the end of December of that year, at which time we had a new list, are a matter of public notoriety. You remember when in the midst of all of this, Patterson, behind our backs, tried to start a house-to-house registration process, which was scheduled to last about 18 months. So you understand why GECOM is not in a state. And then after that, a list was prepared for the purposes of holding the general and regional elections. And then you had 5 months. And then after that, you had the presence of these persons who caused the 5 months. And then you had this elongated recruitment process. So that process is now done. We are hoping to fill the rest of the vacancies in short order so that we can move towards having a refreshed list. And it is my hope, my sincere hope, that we can go back to that situation where we have 2 lists a year through a well-functioning registration system. And allow me to digress for 1 second. The absence of a well-functioning and regular and continuous registration process has spin-off effects. GECOM is the agency that is tasked with registering persons and for issuing national identification cards. This extended hiatus in conducting that process every single day, as late as 5-something this afternoon, I received an inquiry from a colleague at the bar in relation to the availability of identification cards. So it has spin-off effects, not only for the holding of elections. That is why, personally, I would like to see a more regularly and efficiently functioning system. But I can say that on one side of my mouth, but I will hasten to add that the reality is certain prevailing circumstances prevent that from happening.
Dr. Rose?
Mr. Commissioner, I will go back to something that we should not skip over lightly, and that is we had 2 rogue CEOs who called Boodoo and Lowenfield. What is to say, or who is to prevent the present CEO from becoming rogue again in the future? Given what you have said, there are no guarantees.
Those very elaborate and those very strenuous penalties that are proposed in the new legislation, up to and including life imprisonment, if my memory serves me correct.
Well, it depends. If a CEO becomes rogue to the government in power and the government wins an election, I'm almost sure that that person will not be charged or taken to court. But if the next party wins the election, then that will happen. So still, there are no guarantees.
The
For
private criminal
example,
charges.
if Abdul won the election, Lordfield would not have been charged because Budu performed that way and the PP won the election and Budu was not charged. So I'm saying there's still no guarantees. Depending on the party who wins the election.
You keep saying, and this, Dr. Rose, Budu's actions, whatever they were prior to my involvement at the commission. I will agree with you in your retort that that is a matter of public notoriety. However, quite importantly, what the reality is that Budu's services were terminated as a consequence of those allegations that were made against him. Similarly to Lowenfield.
Okay. Now, when we talk about competence, I don't know if I can apply that word to GECOM, because based on last year's population census, Guyana had 786,000 people. That includes children and adults. Yet, during the election, GECOM put out a statement. There are 660,000 registered voters. This means that Guyana, each family in Guyana had less than half of a child. Because how can you say that 660,000 people are eligible to vote when you have a population of 786,000 people? Can you explain that to the nation or to our listeners? Why would GECOM put out such a statement? 660,000 people eligible to vote, and only 460,000 voted. So why GECOM didn't get those numbers right and say, well, look, we have 475,000 people eligible to vote, and now 660,000, because it was stupid.
It is no. I disagree totally with you, Dr. Rose. It is not stupid. That number that there are 660,000 persons eligible to vote is an accurate statement. It is an accurate statement, and that is verifiable. Are you able to verify? Are you able to verify the numbers in the national census? But I will move on very quickly from there. The size of the voters list, is a function of the continuous registration system, and it is comparable to many other jurisdictions. It is comparable to many other jurisdictions which operate under this continuous registration system. And I remember a few years ago when this became a matter of great contention, providing statistical data to the public to demonstrate the number of other territories, including many of our sister CARICOM territories, which had a very large number. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, one of the fields on that bit of statistical data that I presented, one country had a voters list that was larger than the population, and that includes children, like you quite rightly mentioned.
Which country is that?
I don't have the data with me currently. It was something that we would have used, that I would have publicized a long time ago. In fact, as I'm speaking to you, I'm attempting to multitask and look for it. But importantly,
but Dr. Rose, by the time the Commissioner is getting, Commissioner, by the time you're getting your information.
No, I have the information in front of me.
Okay.
Jamaica, and this is data that I utilized in 2019. Jamaica, the electoral list is 6 to 7% of the population. Trinidad, 90%. Barbados, 87%. At that time, Guyana was 78%. St. Vincent, 87%. Dominica, 96%. And then St. Lucia, 98%. And the source of this information is the Swedish Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance IDEA, a world-renowned electoral assistance agency that has actually functioned in Ghana before. So like I said, it is a function of the continuous registration process. But because of the stringent safeguards that are put in place at the polling stations and during the electoral process, it prevents the misuse of any names or any the size of the data or the size of the electoral rolls. I am saying regardless of the size of the electoral rolls, it cannot be misused.
Mr. Commissioner, I normally will not do this, but I don't know where you get that information from. But you know what I will do? I will send you the list of all those countries, the number of people registered to vote during the election cycles. And it will not show nothing what you present there tonight. I got the numbers, I'll send you them. I will not say, well, you're wrong. But it did not show Jamaica had 80% or whatever it is. Nothing like that I saw. In Jamaica's last election, I can tell you the number of people registered to vote. Barbados this last time here, I can do the same. But I will not go there with you. I don't know what the institute submitted or when they got that information. What I'm saying to you, even though they did that, why would Guyana follow in their pursuit? When we have GECOM, who's supposed to, as my colleague Charles said, supposed to be in readiness 24/7. When you send a list of 660,000 people out there to vote, out of 800,000, what are you telling the population? And in fact, only 460,000 people voted. So my question to you is, when will GECOM do the right thing and give us accurate information? That's my question. We don't need no bloated list. We don't need no continuous registration. You get us the accurate information so that people say, yes, GECOM is doing a good job.
It is nice for you to say that we do not need continuous registration. What then is your suggestion as an alternative?
No, I can say you can do continuous registration, but I'm saying to you, give us something that is accurate.
I am saying to you, Dr. Rose, that the number of persons that are on that list are the persons that are registered in the records of the Guyana Elections Commission and are eligible to vote.
You see, that's the problem we're having in this society. And I will tell you the problem is. Yes, Charles.
Can I come in there 1 second, if you don't mind? What Commissioner Conrad is saying is, I think both of you are saying the same thing. Registration and physical presence in Guyana is two different things. I am on the list to vote in Guyana. I registered there before the 2015 election, the house-to-house registration, but I am not living in Guyana. But my name is on the list of electors. If I went back home for the 2020 election, I could have voted because my name is there. I did not go home. So what I'm saying is that there's a lot of people who are registered to vote who are not physically in Guyana, but they're eligible to vote.
Specific issue. You'd recall that in 2019, when under the auspices of Patterson, they attempted to commence a house-to-house elections registration cycle. And that was done. What happened? There was a court challenge. If my memory serves me correctly, and I think it does, the challenge was mounted by Christopher Ram. Now, in that matter, the Honorable Chief Justice ruled that residency was not a requirement for registration. So when Charles Sugrim's name appears on a voters list Are you saying, Dr. Rose, that he should be removed?
I don't know if his name was on the list or not. He's telling
But
me
he
that.
just said it
But,
was.
but my point is.
No. I get your point. But I'm asking you a question. Are you suggesting, assuming that Charles Sugrim's information that he has just presented to us is accurate, and I have no doubt that it is.
Well, you're GECOM. Check my name is on the list. You're there.
Okay.
Check my name.
So my question is then.
Are you saying that we should remove Charles Sugrim's name from the list?
No, well, my question, I'm going to answer that. But the point remains then, this means that if you're living overseas, and I think Guyana's population overseas is more than what's in Guyana right now, then those people overseas can register to vote, and GECOM will take that into consideration and tell us, well, look, we got 800,000 people registered at home, living at home, but we got 900,000 people registered to vote.
But Dr. Rose, did I not just say what the court ruled on this matter?
Yeah.
The court ruled that residency is not a requirement. So yes, all of those 10 million people who live in the diaspora and who are entitled to vote, who are entitled to register, can come and so do and be registered and will form part of the electoral rolls. And there's nothing that we can do about that.
Well, no, I agree. But so what GECOM should have done then, explain this to the people. That look, we have got 800,000 people living in Guyana. We have got 500,000 living abroad. And that's what make up the list of 600,000 or 700 or whatever the number is. Do your PR work, explain to the people. But just don't give us a list and say, these are the people.
Dr. Rose, you're shifting the goalpost. Earlier on, you said that GECOM should present an authentic or an accurate list to the populace.
No, of the people who register at home to vote.
I have explained to you, Charles can't register to vote from New York or
But
from...
Commissioner, I think Dr. Rose's point is that GECOM is not doing a good job in presenting their case to the Guyanese people. That is what Dr. Rose is saying.
Because what I'm saying to you...
And I have no difficulty with that. I have absolutely no difficulty with that. But if you're asking as well, Dr. Rose, for a disaggregation between persons who live in the jurisdiction, those who live without, on the list, that is something that GECOM cannot do. GECOM will not be in a position to do that because nowhere in our records say that Charles Sugrim lives overseas. When he came and registered, he did not put a New York address. He gave an address at where he was staying in Campbellville.
No, Bryce, I live in Bryce, so my Bryce's address is...
It's very easy to find out if he lives in Guyana. Let him show his last work, give an address of his last workplace. But I'm going to close that situation.
Dr. Rose.
That is not a requirement, Doc.
As I said earlier on, GECOM's role is circumscribed by statute. Nowhere in the statute that governs our registration process allows for that. You're asking us to impose an unlawful requirement, which is what the court ruled upon in that previous matter.
Okay. The question is then, and I'm going to move away from this matter, but the question is then, GECOM should explain to the people why they came up with that number. But let's move away from that.
And that I have no difficulty with. Absolutely none.
Tell us, people from abroad register to vote, and we can't stop them. This is why we have 660,000 people not pertain only to Guyanese living at home, but those living in the diaspora as well. So they did not do that. Perceptions become reality because if you ask blacks, they will tell you a lot of Indians register twice to vote. As Indians, a lot of blacks register twice to vote. And that was the perception on the ground. And we can say all we want at the IR office in theory, that is the perception people got. Both races. One group registered twice, another group, and they said they're trying to rig the election. So I'm saying we got to move away from that and let the people know exactly what is taking place. And GECOM did not do that. But my question to you is this. How long it takes for someone to get an ID card from GECOM?
From the registration process, you could only, as a new registrant, is that what you're asking?
No, if I go to GECOM tomorrow to apply for an ID card, tomorrow, February 4th.
On what basis are you applying?
To register, as a Guyanese.
First of all, you have to have a registration process ongoing or a cycle. And currently, as I explained twice during this program, we don't have any ongoing. But as long as there's an ongoing cycle of registration, I think the burden time is about 6 weeks.
Okay. But that's not what, because there are no people who, when GECOM registering people to vote, it takes them over 6 months to get a card. That, I'm not going to follow through on that question. Well, my next question to you is GECOM right now getting ready to list for the local government elections?
I don't think you heard me earlier on when I answered that question, Dr. Rose. One of the processes that we have to undertake in order to be ready for the elections is the preparation of that list. The preparation of that list is dependent on a cycle of registration which has not yet commenced.
Why?
Because it is on one of the items on that roadmap that we are now going through, and which, like I said earlier on, is stymied sometimes by the posture of the commission and its components.
But Commissioner, you mentioned that there is a list that is ready to go. Can that list be used and tell the government that you are ready for local government?
No, Dr. Sugrim, you're misquoting me. I didn't say that.
You said there are two lists. You said there's a current list and there's an ongoing list that is updated every 6 months.
No. I said that there was a time when that system was.
Okay.
Because of the prevailing circumstances, that reality has not occurred.
So there's no current list now that the commission can use?
No, there isn't. And we have to put ourselves in a state of currency so as to have a list certified for its use.
I got you. Okay. Dr. Rose?
Can I ask you a question? I don't know if you know it financially. What is GECOM's annual budget? Do you know?
In an election year, it's probably about $5 billion. And in a non-election year, I think it is 1 point something or 2 point something billion.
Okay. Now, in an election year, that is to get you registered to vote and do all the works at the polling place and so forth. Now,
no, registration is an ongoing process, and that will be part of the even in a non-election year.
My other question is this: how many employees are there at GECOM?
I can't tell you that off my cuff. I wouldn't even hazard a guess. I know it, but I can't remember as we speak.
Okay. If GECOM is not started registration for people to vote in the local government elections, how long the registration period will take to get this local government election this year?
It is my humble view that the entire process, if we start tomorrow morning, we can have elections in 6 months.
In 6 months?
Yes.
Okay. Charles, over to you.
Commissioner, I know we went through a lot of details and started to put you on the spot, but I was going to ask how many staff in the secretariat as well, but you're not so clear of that. Last week, we had two mayors, the mayor of Georgetown and the mayor of Linden. And Commissioner, I want you to, Dr. Rose asked them a question and they made a statement, I believe it was in March of 2020, when they said that the GECOM should accept the result of Lowingfield and Myers, and the chairman should have declared the result, and then whoever want to contest it should go to the courts. Now, I want you to take off your PEP hat. And I know you say you're not PEP, but you're appointed by the PPP. In your view, should the commission should have declared the result based on what Myers did, based on what everybody see was fraudulent, or should we have, just do something else? What is your view? And because both mayors saying that they should accept the result that Myers has submitted to Lowingfield.
I don't know how to answer that question, Mr. Sugrim, without perhaps losing my cool or being less than civil. Obviously, I hold a contrary view. And it is a view that I have canvassed and adumbrated with every shred of my being for all of those 5 months that saga continued. If we have the likes of those two mayors, coupled with partisan as they were hoping to install, then that's the position. That is the position that they wanted. Obviously, I don't support that. Obviously, I don't agree with that, because it is my view, and the courts agree with me, and the courts have borne me out on this issue. We cannot be forced. How more deranged can we be to countenance, in the light of all of those glaring irregularities and fraud, countenance such a result? How? And like I said, the courts have borne me out on this in the plethora of matters.
And I'm not supporting you, Commissioner, in what you just said there. I agree with that, except to say this, that in the PNC or the coalition was blaming the 47 ballot boxes on the East Coast, that the documents were not in the ballot box. And somehow I believe that they are blaming the PPP for that. But I think the nation need to know very clear it was not the PPP who was managing the election, it was GECOM. And if GECOM personnel like Mr. Lowingfield and Mr. Myers, who deliberately, in my view, and the view of many others, they deliberately did not put those papers in the ballot box because they knew a recount will be coming, and then they will use that to declare that the result is null and void. So it's a lot of misinformation and a lot of suspicion and so on. And I really hope that the Guyanese people have seen it through and understand that, as you rightly said, Commissioner, the people who are manning the secretariat must be professionals, must be independent, and their job is not to decide who will lose the election. You have to declare to the people of Guyana who gets what vote. Let the people decide, not the commission or the commissioners. And that's the problem we're having all the time, that we are so partisan in our thinking that whatever we want to see happen, if it doesn't happen, then we think it's unfair. And that's the problem. Commissioner, I know time is running out on us. Do you want to say anything in closing as we close tonight?
Well, first of all, I want to express my gratitude. It's always a pleasure to be here. It always engenders stimulating discussion. And while it may seem as though sometimes I am vehemently opposed to some suggestions that you have made, I always enjoy these interactions. It is my hope, both as a young person and as a professional, to see GECOM function in a manner that it was intended to function, despite the frailties and despite the deliberate actions of certain persons. And I make it my duty to ensure that all of my contributions at the Commission are geared towards ensuring that this is done. That being said, I wish that could be replicated in various aspects, and so that GECOM delivers on its mandate. By the Constitution and by statute, GECOM has two functions: register people and hold elections. And I think if we deliver both of these in an effective manner, we would have served well. And
in a nutshell, let me just jump in a nutshell. What the future holds for GECOM?
Well, GECOM has to function, and like I said, we have all this talk about reform, and what we want to see, what we really want to see, and if you look at all of the constitutional provisions, all of the statutory provisions governing GECOM, you will see on paper it's a proper organization, well organized. It is just that those functions need to be executed and executed in a proper manner.
And Mr. Commissioner, before you leave, what time frame have you given the CEO to present his roadmap for the local government election? And when is the commission likely to meet to approve that roadmap and start the process to get the election going?
Well, we are meeting tomorrow, as we usually do every Tuesday. And it is my hope that we will receive that roadmap at tomorrow's meeting, if not shortly thereafter, and we can act. With cheerful gladness and cheerful haste to ensure that it is done in a proper and timely manner.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rose, anything in closing?
Yes, Mr. Commissioner, here my closing remarks, and I hope you agree with me. We need better internet services in Guyana. It's all cutting off and calling back and reconnecting. We have to solve that problem. 2, government offices should not be closed.
One at a time. Did my connection at any time cut off this evening?
Yes.
It did?
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, but
not to my knowledge, Doc. Not to my knowledge. I think it was.
That's okay. But the thing is this, though: if you're talking to someone, you never get disconnected.
No, the reality is, proper internet service is available in Guyana. It is whether persons want to utilize it and access it. I have chosen to access it, and I know in the past we've had instances where we've had connectivity issues, but I can tell you that we did not have that tonight, and there's a reason for that.
Okay, but what I'm saying to you, when talking on the phone to someone overseas, you always see that reconnecting, coming on and cutting off, coming. It never happened to you?
It happens in North America too, Dr. Rose. Don't worry.
Where?
I've had it happen.
Where?
Doc, it happens here too. That's true.
Anyway, it happens here, but it's not sporadic like Guyana. We should not even make that comment, and it happens in North America too. But anyway, the second thing is this: government offices should not be closed during lunch hours, and there's still many being closed.
I agree with you.
Newly appointed public servants should not wait 3 months before getting their first paycheck. These people have to travel to work, they have to buy clothes, they have to buy food. 3 months is too long, and they will be struggling. The government has to use that.
I understand that steps are being taken to remedy that. In fact,
5 years ago, the steps are being taken to remedy it. It's still happening today. I can call people who started to work since last year, October, and haven't got a paycheck as yet. So 5 steps are being taken.
You're raising that to the wrong person.
No. I'm not raising it to you. I'm talking in general.
Okay.
In general, not to you. 3, public servants should answer their telephones. They do not answer telephones. And I'm saying to everybody in Guyana, if a public servant tells you they're going to call you back, 1 out of every 500 will call you back. Not 1 out of 10 or 20. They do not call people back. It's a barefaced lie. And 3, government must address mental health issues in Guyana. It is growing rapidly. Suicidal has taken its toll in the country. Every week, there are 2 or 3 suicides of Borbis on the quarantine. Almost every week. I'm from the quarantine, I know this. Last week they had 2. The week before they had 3. So the government must remedy it. And do not tell us that there's an hotline for people to call to deal with societal issues. You call it hotline and see if anyone will answer the phone at the other end. It rings from now until Noah will build his other ark. So I'm saying to you,
you got to arrange a special program for Dr. Rose alone to
no, but these are things affecting the Guyanese people. And I'm saying these are small things that can be rectified and solved. Solve them.
Doc, there's a lot of problems in Guyana. Wife beating husband, husband beating wife, animals are being beaten, the cemetery needs to be done. There's a whole lot of problems we have there.
I know.
I'm giving you one more gripe before I go. Any more?
Yes. The holes in the highways, Linden, East Coast, quarantine. Why can't the government send a small truck with some asphalt there and fill those holes and get a small road to run and make it smooth? Why people got to swerve from one end to the next? These are not long stretches. It's just a pothole here, a pothole there. Why can't that be fixed?
I think in this year budget, Doc, they're refacing the Linden Highway, they're doing the East Coast. So I think the budget has a lot of money for that.
Thank you. I've been hearing that every year. As you drive these highways, you're seeing all those holes. They need a truck with some asphalt every day, a crew to go up and fill these holes. And that will solve the problem.
You know who I will suggest? You know who I'll suggest as your guest next week, Dr. Rose? The Honorable Minister of Public Works.
No. I'm talking in general. I'm not blaming anybody for this. But I'm saying it is something simple for the government to do. Solve those small problems and the people will become happier and will support you more. Don't let those holes deteriorate and get larger. I'm driving up the East Coast, there are holes. Driving to Quarantine, there are holes. Going to Blackbush Polo, there are holes. Driving to Linden, there are holes. These are small holes on the road. Get a crew to fix them. You don't need to say redo the entire surface. But those are my gripes.
Okay,
and every week I will have gripes.
The final Mr. Sugrim, arrange a program for Dr. Rose.
I definitely will. I know Dr. Rose has
my closing remarks.
Dr. Rose have the Guyanese people at heart, but Dr. Rose also, the contractors who build our roads, they need to be held accountable, because if we have to keep filling potholes, it means the contractor is not doing a good job. But those are different issues anyway. So audience, we want to thank you so much for being with us. Mr. Commissioner, thank you so much for taking time off to be with us. And we will see you next week when we have some more spicy discussion on issues affecting our dear country of Guyana. God bless you all. Thank you, Noir, and thank you, Devin, for doing a good job for us tonight. God bless you all.
Mr. Commissioner, I want to talk to you after the program.